So for those who don't know, can you give us the elevator pitch on what 7shifts does?
Yeah, for sure. 7shifts, we're all about labor and team management for restaurants. So in the early days, that meant scheduling. And today, our focus is on the entire employee lifecycle for restaurants. So hiring, onboarding, training, scheduling, paying, and retaining of restaurant staff.
That's crazy. It must have been a wild 16 months over the past year, but ended in a raise in a Series B, I heard, which is really exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's been exciting. I mean, COVID impacted everyone a lot, but restaurants were hit really, really hard. So it's exciting to be able to help them recover.
And be that support system for them. That's huge. It's really exciting. And for those who don't know, we'll be dropping the link for 7shifts in the chat to learn a little bit more. So just to dive in a little bit about you, you joined 7shifts in March of this year. What got you excited to join the team? What made the switch easy and exciting for you?
I've been watching, I've known a bunch of people at 7shifts for some time, so I've certainly been aware of the company, but honestly, like COVID was a big part of it. I wanted to find a way that I could like directly impact the recovery, and knowing that restaurants were among the hardest hit and seeing that like labor, getting people back in, getting employees in to restaurants was such a huge focus. I was really excited by that opportunity to make a difference there. It's been kind of like a theme of my career. You know, I started out working in like pure technology, building network appliances, and then I found my way into healthcare, and I found that like, you know, combination of helping people and using technology is really what I'm looking for. And everyone likes food and everyone needs a restaurant, so it really lined up. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And there's so much overlap in even where you're coming from to even the future of 7shifts, which is awesome. So diving in a little bit about like 7shifts and the recruiting, we have a lot of folks out here looking for new roles, and I know 7shifts is hiring like crazy after the recent series. And just in my own personal life, I know a lot of folks that work there, and they all talk about the values and like the mission of being at 7shifts. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of those key mission statements and how the company lives by them?
Yeah, so we call them BEAMS. It's an acronym for, you know, the first letter of each of our kind of like core traits or core values. So that's to be radically candid, that's the B. Embrace new challenges, to act like an owner, make every experience an 11, and to solve with simplicity. So there's the BEAMS. And I know that like every company has values, but like I really think that we live by them and embody them. And we constantly acknowledge each other and recognize each other when we, when we demonstrate those traits.
Mm-hmm. I like that you have an acronym. It's so easy to remember. But the one that stands out to me is sort of like the being radically candid and accepting and open in the workforce. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that's a huge selling point, and that candidness doesn't exist in a lot of companies. So can you speak to a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of reasons why candor is important, but I think that, you know, as a technologist, getting feedback on what you're doing well and what you're not doing well on is really like the best way to improve. And so I think that you know, radical candor, that being radically candid is part of our core values, because it's the way that we support each other. By being honest with each other about what we need from them and how they can improve and what's working and what isn't. That's how we continuously improve.
And what does that look like now that we're sort of distributed? Is it all through Slack? Like, how does your team communicate and keep that feedback cycle going?
Specifically, we're talking Beams. We actually have a Slack channel called Beams. And we have a system for recognizing someone whenever they demonstrate that value, and it automatically notifies the entire company. And every time we have an all hands meeting, the first thing we do is we call out, you know, some great examples of one of each of the values and who's been doing a great job demonstrating it. So it's like a core part of everything that we do. And I have it off on the screen, off to the side there. There's the constant stream of people patting each other on the back and calling each other out for doing well.
That's amazing. It's not every day that you see companies live their values beyond what's on their job ads. So it's cool that you folks enforce it and live it as a team. That's so cool. So I'd like to talk a little bit about sort of use that as a transition to talking about culture. So how has 7shifts managed building a culture in the online space over the last 16 months and maintaining that culture?
Yeah, so I mean, 7shifts before COVID was very focused on in-office culture. We had offices in Toronto and Saskatoon and New York, and so obviously, like companies that hadn't embraced remote work had to quickly figure out how to make it work. And honestly, I wasn't with 7shifts during the transition, but it's amazing to me how well it all works. So it's lots of little subtle things, like we use Donut, for example, to automatically set up every 2 weeks coffee dates with people from other departments. We kind of brought all of our the beams and made them remote friendly, right? And then more than anything, there's so much work that our people and culture team do in order to try and make sure that our culture remains strong. Everything from a quarterly newsletter to monthly updates and all the rest of it. And I think it goes a long way. Yeah, and we actually just recently had a refresh week, kind of acknowledging, I know this is, it seems like not cultural to shut down the company for a week, but ultimately we acknowledged that everyone was tired, right? COVID has kind of, worn everyone down and they're missing certain things in their lives. So in order to make it easier, we were just like, let's close the place down, let everyone relax, come back a week later. And I don't know, there's been a great energy that comes from letting everyone take a break and then like all the oars hit the water at the same time. And get back.
Wow, that's a whole week. The whole company shut down for a week.
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously some roles where they had to stagger or offset, but yeah, the whole company shut down. So yeah, no, it's been good.
That's such a nice reset button for the whole team after a bit of a crazy year. That's amazing. I wish I had never heard of a company doing like that. It's the first time.
Me neither. It was the first time I've experienced it, but it's been great.
Yeah. That's amazing. So I know that you worked fully remote for 8 years prior to joining 7shifts. What sort of tidbits or learnings did you bring into sort of help the engineering team as they continued online from your previous experience?
Well, I mean, admittedly, I've only been with 7shifts for like 4.5 months, so I can't take credit for how awesome everyone is. They figured this out on their own. But honestly, like a big part of my experience, certainly, I think we're all working remote, but I think it's worth like drawing the line between working from home and working remote, because I think that there's a big difference, and we're starting to experience that shift, right? As more and more people go back into the office, but also they're no longer tied to their homes, right? So like, what does remote work look like when people are spending all their time traveling, or they're digital nomads, or they're like, I live an hour and a half north of the city, surrounded by trees in the forest, and that's how how remote work has manifested itself for me. But I think that maybe one of the key things that I brought was an understanding that one of the key differences with fully embracing remote work is acknowledging that it doesn't really matter where someone lives, as long as they're productive and they're doing a great job and they're doing well with their team. And so that means not paying people based on where they live. Like, just to be blunt and radically candid, I think that you shouldn't be penalized if you happen to choose to live somewhere other than Toronto, being the highest market. So we've transitioned to paying everyone, all engineers, Toronto market rates, no matter where they are in Canada. And honestly, it took me a long time to realize that was the only thing that made sense, in my opinion, is to acknowledge that Canada's Canada, and that if you want to live in on an island in BC, as long as you've got good internet, then go for it.
There's definitely like an understanding or a sort of common misunderstanding of work from home is sitting at an apartment the size of a shoebox in downtown Toronto with entirely surrounded by screens, and it's not the case, right? I mean, you saw Jason earlier; he's 2.5 hours north of the city as well. So that definitely resonates to me, and I know for a lot of folks in the audience that it's kind of a breath of fresh air to hear something like that. It's not every day you hear companies like I said before, living their goals and actually implementing it in how they run their company.
Well, and I just sorry.
No, go ahead.
To anyone who has had, not the most positive experience working from home during COVID, I think the light at the end of the tunnel is that there are so many amazing remote work experiences ahead of us once things kind of return to normal. if you're able to maintain that remote work flexibility, like I've worked from sailboats for a week in the Mediterranean, or like there's a whole new world available that I look forward to going back to.
Yeah. Well, Jason, take note. I will be working from the Mediterranean starting next week. So with that, what does the future of work look like for 7shifts? Is it remote? Is it hybrid? What are you folks thinking?
Well, I mean, like a lot of companies, I think that hybrid, depending on how you define hybrid, right? Like Apple hybrid, you're forced 2 days and it's Monday and Wednesday or whatever in the office is, I don't think that's the future. I think that having an office is a value add on top of remote work, in the sense that being able to work remotely, but then still have that office to come into if you want to, even if you don't live nearby, these like few opportunities to meet in person become even more important with remote work. And so, we have offices, our offices will remain in Saskatoon, Toronto, and New York. But for the most part, unless your role really requires that you be in office, it will be that we pick these key moments where it's really important to team building, gathering, that kind of thing. And these will be the moments that we're all together, we fly everyone, and then make these connections. And admittedly, I did remote with like pure remote where we had no offices for a long time, and you can do it. But I think there is a lot of value in having that space, even if it kind of morphs into an event space, more than, a focused space.
There's something to be said about having an actual face to a name and knowing that your colleagues exist below the chest down, and actually chatting with them it's really special. And I think the 7-shift plan makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's a great sort of mix of that.
I keep getting you off, but I was going to say that right now our plan is at least once a year to fly everyone in the company to somewhere. And, that might be in the prairies where we're headquartered, or who knows, might be in the mountains, but we'll pick somewhere, fly everyone there. And then at a bare minimum, once a year, the entire company will hang out in person. So never as remote as this COVID year has been.
And I think, that's really special. It gives folks something to look forward to and getting to meet each other. So with that, you just raised a Series B, huge opportunities here. What does the future look like with the Series B? What sort of roles are you hiring for? Where's the focus?
Yeah, so I mean, there's kind of like three key areas that we're looking to invest more in. Like I mentioned, hiring, onboarding, training, the whole employee life cycle. And obviously we started with scheduling, and we've been, pushing harder and harder on all those other aspects of the life cycle. But, especially hiring, onboarding, and training are the areas that COVID, all these restaurants effectively had to let go of staff, or there's new restaurants starting up. And so that like beginning of the employee life cycle is an area that we were really pushing hard on, and we're hiring, we're building a new team around that. And so we're hiring engineering managers, engineers like full stack PHP React engineers. And then beyond that, our kind of like a little further ahead plan is that we want to become kind of a system of record with, amazing public APIs that people can build on top of, so that the other software in the same kind of ecosystem can start like leveraging us and building on top of our platform. And then looking even further ahead, we want to make hiring easier by becoming a hiring network, kind of like LinkedIn for restaurants, in the sense that, when you move on from one restaurant, you're a part of a network that can easily move to a new one, make it easier for restaurants to find good people, and make it easy for people who work for restaurants to find good restaurants.
Whoa, big plans. And this is a great time to be joining you folks. I'll make sure the careers page is dropped in chat for you. So I want to take the last 5 minutes. We have a lot of job seekers here, so I want to sort of do an advice column to end off tonight's show. So a couple of questions. What is something that you wish more candidates asked you in the interview process?
Wow. That's a good question. You know what? People never ask me about mistakes. I know that when you're interviewing someone, you often ask them things like, what's the greatest mistake you made, or what do you wish you could have done differently? But I very seldom get that question in response. I hope you don't ask it of me now on the fly, but I think that would be it. You talked about candor. I think that being open and honest about our mistakes is a key part of candor, and And yeah, I think that we should incorporate that more into these discussions.
That's awesome. And TechTO is hiring as well, small plug there. And no one has ever asked me that either. It's I want people to ask us how they can, where are the opportunities for them to help us improve, and where can they jump in and help us. Jason, we're not making poorly if you tell us as mistakes on stage.
No, if you want, I can.
Yeah, why don't you, what would your answer be to that question?
You know what, I think that early on in my career, I maybe was a little bit more, I'm too technology focused. Like I was a Java developer, when I started my career as a Java developer. At some point I learned a new technology, and now I'm a whatever developer. Now I'm a whatever, I'm more focused today on, so hopefully you're asking me about me personally, not about 7shifts, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I think that being technology agnostic and focusing on problems that matter. What are the problems I want to solve, and then working backwards to what technologies are best suited to it, instead of leading with I'm a Java developer, I'm a Ruby developer. That's when I think back on my youth. I think that I was overly affiliated with a given technology.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of folks that are, I'm diehard Ruby to the end, and they see themselves only as a Ruby developer, but they don't, look at, I want to be in health tech, and what does that mean for my career? I think that's a really important piece of advice. How do you suggest people go about thinking about that? Like, how should people dip their toes in figuring out where they want to get excited or where they want to go?
That's it. Obviously as a technologist, I'm excited by technology like anyone else, but I've also been surprised by things I thought I wouldn't like that ended up being super valuable. So I guess the big thing is, one, to never turn down the opportunity to learn something new, no matter how far afield it seems from your focus. I've worked on VMS mainframes that taught me things I never would have learned working on modern technology, but I would start with a problem that matters to you. I've worked in the dating space, trying to find love for people. I've worked in healthcare, medical research, and every time it started with the problem I want to solve, and then I go backwards from there. And then likewise, even my current role is kind of around, I think it's about COVID. It's about helping people recover. So anyway, all that to say, just to find something that you care about and then work backwards.
That's amazing. And I wish people heeded that advice a little more, because I feel like it's hard to do that in the job market. One last question specifically around advice as well. How do you feel about LinkedIn cold reach outs? We tend to get a lot of those. People have very strong opinions about them. I thought I'd throw it your way.
Oh, well, you know what? I always appreciate when I receive one if it's actually very clearly targeted. I feel like whenever I do a cold reach out on LinkedIn, I try and get to know the person as best I can before I reach out, and I try and be specific about why I reached out to them, not just, hey, you're in Toronto and you're a Ruby developer or whatever. So anyway, I hope that makes the cold reach out okay,
Yeah, it does, for sure.
You've invested time and that you had a good reason for them instead of the tens of thousands. Oh yeah, there we go. I see Jason's note there.
No, that's great advice, and it's something that both people on both the employer and attendee side can relate to. So that's actually.
Sorry, go
ahead. No, okay.
I'm a sucker for if somebody can call out something from my GitHub repos. Not that I have a ton of high-profile ones, but that's a hard to say no to. Hey, I saw whatever. I love what you did on line 23. That's the ultimate cold outreach.
Oh, that's awesome. I never thought about going into people's GitHubs. That's kind of genius. And I know yours is public. So audience, if you're listening, Jason's way ahead of you. Take note, everyone.
There you go. Admittedly, my role today is pretty far from the code, so there's nothing recent. Yes. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Luke. This has been lovely chatting with you. And for anyone that's interested in 7shifts, myself and Luke are going to continue chatting the breakout sessions at the end of the show. So Luke, we'll say bye for now, and we'll see you in a bit. Awesome. Thanks,
Thank you.
Luke.
That's great.